Breeze Nation, what is good? It's your boy Pat the Designer back at it again. Appreciate y'all for tuning in and showing love to another edition of the Windy City Breeze Sports Talk Daily. On today's episode, we got to talk about, of course, the Chicago Bulls. They're the only news that is going on around anything Chicago right now. And got to talk about this front office, talking about how have they done? How good of a job have they done this offseason? Has this offseason been a success? Has this offseason been a failure? Gonna break all that down on a little quick live here over on the Windy City Breeze. Appreciate y'all tuning in, showing love. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave that 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Y'all just go ahead and do me a favor and just
come on. Push the button. Come on. Push the button. Come on, push the button.
Yeah, come on, push the button.
You heard what she said.
You heard what Sue Young said. Push the button, as she said. There was some words in there. I appreciate y'all rocking with us as always, man. Let's jump into the conversation because I think that this is a very interesting conversation revolving around the Chicago Bulls right now. When you talk about a few different things that have happened with this franchise this offseason, when you're looking at, okay, you almost have to look at this in a twofold way when talking about successes, when talking about how the Bulls have handled or not handled the offseason, when talking about how this team has gone about trying to build the next version of what is to come. And I have two answers on this. By the way, shout out to everybody in the chat. Jacob on the Don in the chat, Crimson in the chat as always, Daniel Berry in the chat. Appreciate y'all rocking with your boy. I have two ways that I'm looking at this with how the Bears have built this team to this point. Number one, this offseason, to me, I would say has been a successful offseason for you, even with some of the issues that you have had. But the reason that I say that you have to look at this in a twofold manner is because, yes, while this offseason has been successful in my mind, your successes are based off of the fact that you have completely failed previously. And so now you're making best case scenario decisions to fix the situation that you have put your basketball team in. So are the successes there? Yeah, they are. I think when I look out at this team, I don't see a team that is filled with pieces that I don't see being impactful in the future of this team. But does that mean that the successes are long-term successes as far as what you have done over the course of this? And I think that's the part where this gets very tough for the Chicago Bulls because I just can't see that, right? Let's start it off with how this offseason started. The Josh Giddey deal. The Josh Giddey deal is the biggest deal that AK has made. It's really the only trade we've seen AK make in what is this, 4 years now? This is the first trade that he's really made. Now all of a sudden we're seeing some movement. But that was the first trade that he had made, I believe, in 4 seasons here. A lot of people look at that trade as a failure on the part of the Chicago Bulls because you didn't get draft capital back. You didn't get the value that you wanted to see back for a guy like Alex Caruso. Alex Caruso is a phenomenal player. How could you not get more for him? And I understand that line of thinking as far as you could have gotten more before. How did you screw this up? But for right now, the Josh Giddey deal is a success. Could you have gotten more? 110%. Should have taken the deals that were available at the deadline. We know that the Bulls had opportunities to go out and get 2 top 10 or 2 first-round picks. I'm not going to say top 10, but 2 first-round picks. We know that the Bulls have had opportunities to go out and build multiple situations here that I think put them in a better position to go out and be successful. But at the end of the day, you got a valuable piece back that is 9 years younger than the piece that you currently had on your team. And yes, I love Alex Caruso. I think Caruso could go out there and be a phenomenal player. I think that Caruso is literally the defensive piece that to me puts Oklahoma City over the top. I do. But I also look at this and say, while that is true, the Bulls aren't in a position to take advantage of that. And should they have gotten more? Maybe, right? There's a debate there. I'm not saying that you can't debate that the Bulls shouldn't have gotten more draft capital. I'm not saying that you can't debate the Bulls shouldn't have gotten more, even some late round draft capital out of it, right? I'm not saying any of that. What I am saying is that you got a valuable piece that can contribute to your team's future and actually fit the timeline for your team's future for a piece that you weren't going to be able to take advantage of. That's why, to me, this is a better scenario for the Chicago Bulls. And that's why, to me, that is a successful deal. Long term, did you miss? 110%. There's no question about it. You missed. But I almost feel like you have to look at this offseason in two phases. I almost feel like you have to look at this offseason as, how do you fix all of the screw ups that you already had and still be able to go out there and be successful this offseason? To me, you got best case scenario situation with the Josh Giddey deal. And you know what? When I look at the DeMar DeRozan trade that ended up going down last night, the DeMar DeRozan trade was all the news. Kid covered that for us over on the channel. Appreciate him doing that for us. You know what I mean? The phenomenal video. Check it out if you haven't seen it yet. Broke down, you know, kind of what he thought, you know, was the pros and cons of the trade. Here's my thought process on it. You had a player that was leaving for nothing, who you offered major money to. 2 years, $80 million was the reported price. Who you wanted to keep here, who you knew was going to be taking shots away from the young player, but maybe he brings some stability if he takes a step back. Fine with DeRozan being here, right? Especially if Giddey's here, maybe it works. Who cares? But he wasn't, right? He wasn't a part of that. But you go out into free agency if you're DeMar DeRozan. You see that there's nothing available. You come back to the Chicago Bulls. You say, yo, can you do me a solid? I don't want to take $13 million. I don't want to go out here and be underpaid. By the way, over 100 in the chat. Hold on, I got to get to the air horn. Nah. Hit that like button if you have not done so. Subscribe to the page, man. Leave that 5-star review. You come back to the Bulls, you say, can you do me a solid? Can we work out a sign and trade? Can you get something out of this? Bulls work it out. They call up his other team that is basically his buddies as well, right? The San Antonio Spurs. Spurs are like, we're in. We'll get DeMar help, whatever he needs. Let's do it. Spurs trade away, or Spurs get back Harrison Barnes. You end up trading away DeMar DeRozan, sign and trade him for a $70 million deal. You get back 2 second-round picks that you weren't going to get out of this. You were getting nothing. You get back Chris Duarte, who I don't know if he's on the team or not, but right now you filled out your roster with a young piece that maybe you take a chance on, maybe you don't. I don't believe that Duarte is a part of this team long-term at all. He's on the last year of a rookie deal. Fine by that. You take back some cash, which opens up and expands your trade exception to now $17.6 million. So now you have the ability, if you clear some pieces off of this team, to bring in a player for at least that amount of money. That is a success. That's a successful move in the offseason. That is something that we haven't seen the Chicago Bulls be able to pull off. And I think, to me, that's why long term, because you have gotten more for DeRozan, heck yeah. Should you have moved him at the deadline? Heck yeah. For the situation that you put yourself in, did you have a successful offseason? And I think that that is the case. Or did you get a success on that move? I think that that is the case. And so that's why I look at this almost in this twofold lens, because to me, now I'm looking at, okay, how are you building your team towards next season? How are you building your team towards trying to not be in this position again, right? And I think that you have done exactly what I asked the Chicago Bulls to do. Now, this does not mean that I am uber positive on where the Bulls are. This does not mean that I am extremely excited that the Bulls have done all of this and have missed out on all these moves and didn't make, but now they're getting something back from. I'm not excited about what the Bulls have built here. What I'm excited about is that the plan that I can finally see coming through for the Chicago Bulls is, hey, we're doing this one of two ways heading into the draft. On the one side, because in my mind, this team is a 35 to at best 40 win team, right? I don't see a ton of wins coming from this Bulls team. I just don't. 35 to 40 win Bulls team, maybe. But my mind is changed on that if we get into the season and Kobe White is exactly what people expect Kobe White to be. If we get into the season and Josh Giddey turns into the player who we saw last season whenever Shai Gilgeous was not out there and he was actually able to operate the offense how he wanted to operate the offense, or the season before where he was allowed to be more of a point guard. My mind is changed on that if you see young players developing. Because if you see young players developing, now all of a sudden you feel like, right, if Kobe White becomes that 25 point per game scorer, nobody's upset. Nobody's sitting here losing their mind. Nobody's sitting here freaking out. Nobody's sitting here, yeah, I mean, like, oh my goodness, like even if they win 39 games again, you're sitting here saying, wow, I did not expect this Bulls team to be this good with all of the changes that they made this offseason. This might actually be a step. That's a big if. The biggest if of all. You need to see somebody turn into a star talent, and you're making a bet on your team that the veterans that you had ahead of those guys were what was hindering them from being able to go out there and be great. That's the bet you're making right now. Is that the best bet that you can go out there and make right now? It is, unfortunately. Right now, that's the best that you can do, unfortunately. And that's why I say you have to look at this almost through two lenses. I understand the people who are upset by the moves that the Bulls have made this offseason because you could have gotten more. But for the position that your front office puts your team in, I think that, and this is a backtrack on what they've done, right? This is them going, we screwed up. We got to figure out how to get out of this. I think that they've handled that part really well. The last major piece that the Chicago Bulls really need to handle going forward in this is if we're being honest, okay, how in the world do we get off of Zach LaVine's contract? Is it better to just bring Zach back at this point? Do we hold on to Zach LaVine? Do we see how many games we can win if Zach LaVine's a part of this team? Because I said this on the Friday episode of The Daily Show. There's no increasing Zach LaVine's value. I keep seeing that rhetoric go around here, right? Well, you let him play and you increase his value. That's not possible. Everyone else has been moved on this team. Or I'm sorry, everyone else has been moved that can be moved ahead of Zach LaVine, and still nobody's calling. Still nobody wants him. Everybody else that could have been moved in place of Zach LaVine being on this team has been moved. And other franchises have said, we'll take you before we take them, or before we take him. There is no increasing Zach LaVine's value by letting him play out this season. Guess what people are going to realize Zach LaVine is? He's a 25-5-5 player that can go out there and shoot the three ball at an above 38% clip. He can go out there and get any shot he wants. He's going to be somewhat injury prone. You don't know if he's going to have a commitment every single night to defense. Like, what new are you going to learn about Zach LaVine? And this is why I've continued to say this goes deeper than just the player on the court. This goes deeper than just, oh, I think this guy's a good or bad basketball player. This goes deeper than just the contract, because I've seen bad contracts get moved. Tell me you haven't seen a $40 million per year player get moved, and I'll show you Russell Westbrook. I'll show you Bradley Beal. I'll show you and these are guys who were moved probably when they had their lowest value. Show me a player on a 40, or tell me you haven't seen a $40 million player on that has some injury issues not get moved, and I'll show you Bradley Beal. I'll show you John Wall. Heck, I'll show you, what was Gilbert Arenas' contract? What's that extrapolate out to? We can't pretend like we haven't seen this. So this goes deeper than just people sitting there looking at Zach LaVine and going, he's a good or bad basketball player, in my opinion. Because I've seen those guys get moved around. I've seen those players go to teams that are literally up against the luxury tax and go, F it, we'll take it. We're trying anything. And that's really what makes this tough. That's the biggest piece they have to move, and the league has turned their back on them. And I think that's the decision to me that overall we'll talk about whether you made a good or bad decision in free agency, or if you had a good or successful or a failed offseason. Because to me, this has not been a failed offseason. Is it only a success based on what you've already failed at? 100%. But you know what? I can deal with you having successes after failure, because the hope is that you learned from your failures and now you're able to turn those into future successes. I can deal with that. Sometimes you got to fail. Look at the Bears. Look at the Bears. George McCaskey is the perfect example of that. George McCaskey, since he has been the Bears head of or the Bears owner, right? The guy that's in there. I don't care, jump in.
You could have responded in the message. Like, you didn't have to put me on blast like that. Jesus Christ, Pat.
You know, jump in. Jump in. I don't care. Just in here talking. The pettiest man alignments, P Kid in the building. The point I'm making, look at the Chicago Bears when you talk about failures versus successes. You had a team who failed miserably through their first GM regime. Miserably.
By the way, I have to get a green screen. That looks phenomenal.
I appreciate you. Who literally was like, we're going to go John Fox. We're going to build this up. We're going to draft Mitch Trubisky. We're going to go out here. Now we're going to fire all of these guys. We're going to bring in this guy. Now we got Ryan Pace in the building, right? Oh, no, Ryan Pace came in with John Fox. John Fox was first coach. We're going to fire John Fox. We got Matt Nagy. Here we go. We hit the ground running. Wait a minute. We suck. George McCaskey looked at it and was like, that ain't good enough. And what I did there wasn't good enough. Now in his second regime, we are excited. In his second regime, we went through the horrible years. Now we've got the first overall pick and Caleb Williams. You got the 9th overall pick and Rome Odunze. You got a team that looks like it's built out. You have some financial stability on the team. So I can deal with you going through your failures if it leads to your successes. The Bulls have went through their failures. They missed on a bunch of pieces they should have moved. They held on to this team too long. They missed on opportunities to actually move pieces out. And now it's time to build on the successes because you can't go back and change where you missed that. You just can't. And so for me, it's a good start. Is it a great offseason? No. Have they failed this offseason? No. What are your thoughts there, kid?
I don't know if they haven't failed this offseason, but I understand your sentiments and I appreciate where you're coming from. Ultimately, I think the biggest failure is you gave Zach a contract to say that you're the guy, and you didn't allow him to be the guy. And I'm going to continue to harp on that because the reality of it is his contract is so hard to move, not because it's a bad contract, but because of the new CBA. Teams now have to decide, am I going to make him my number one because he has a number one contract, or at least a clear number two contract. And that 15% trade kicker that someone just brought in there is a big thing. It's an accelerating contract. So, I mean,
it's not a big thing for other teams, though.
It's a big thing.
We got to pay the kicker.
We got to pay the kicker, true. But he also has a player option at $48 million. His contract, actually, he gets paid more every year leading up into that option. 100%. It becomes a very expensive contract in that aspect. And when you really put that together, why did you give this person this contract if you weren't going to allow them to take the reins as the number one option?
But see, here's my thing. And it's like I said, we've seen that move, though.
We saw that move before the new CBA.
100%.
Now that the new CBA is in place, we have not seen that contract move.
But we're seeing teams who are just kind of waiting it out. We're seeing teams that, yeah, the money I do think plays a factor in it, but there's teams that could use a player like Zach LaVine that don't want Zach LaVine.
The Warriors absolutely wanted Zach LaVine.
But they do not want him. No, the Warriors didn't want Zach LaVine.
The Warriors wanted Zach.
The Warriors turned down a deal for Zach LaVine.
The way that they would have had to do it, they would have had to assume some of Chris Paul's contract, and they couldn't afford that.
Even that, right? Like how serious is the interest if the talks aren't continuing? How serious is the interest if you instantly say, okay, we're done. We're going to go a different direction. We're going to sign other pieces and bring other guys in, right? Like that to me is more damning than anything, right? If the Warriors want Zach LaVine, because let's be real, talent wise, Zach LaVine is probably the third most talented player on this list out of the names out there.
What list are we talking about?
The free agent list this year, right? You had Paul George, you had James Harden. I guess, well, I'd say maybe fourth, somewhere in there. Second. You got DeMar in there, right?
I would say second because I don't think James Harden is as talented as he was before. Like you said, he's a system, not a system player.
Right.
And it's hard to put that around a James Harden in his latter years. It's just very difficult. Yeah, I know, assist king and everything like that. But if you really look at the team, it's very hard for you not to get 10 assists on that particular team.
Right. Listen, which is fine. But my point is the second most, even if you believe that, the second most talented player on this list, nobody wants to touch. Chicago Bulls have called over 15 teams. The second most talented player. Talent has always trumped all. And even in this new CBA, we have seen teams that are like, I mean, but I'll take a risk on the talent. Even under this new CBA, we've seen teams that have moved things around during the season last season that were like, we'll take a risk on the talent. What the Clippers did. Going out and I don't know why the heck that was a weird situation the whole time, but going out and getting James Harden.
Yeah, I don't know why they did that.
But it was weird. It kind of worked out, but not really. But we'll take a risk on the talent, right? We've seen that. We will always see that. Nobody's taking a risk on the talent. And so to me, like how the Bulls move in the Zach LaVine, like there's nothing that's going to change about who Zach LaVine is. There's nothing that's going to be different about what happens around Zach LaVine, right? He's not all of a sudden going to turn into in a different system. He's going to be the player that turns four other players on the court into freaking the stars and role players that lead you to a championship, not at this point in his career. So what you're seeing is more than likely what you're going to get. And if you believe he's the second most talented player, the league is like, we agree. You keep him over there.
Yeah, the funny thing is, it's like you got to look at the Paul George contract. And if you really look at it, that's very similar to something that Zach LaVine received. Are you willing to pay him that? No, he's not Paul George. But this kind of goes into the aspect of where you said, can you improve your stock by playing? I do think that is the case. The reason why Paul George, even in his latter years, was able to get this particular contract is because we saw him without Kawhi many times lead them into some crazy playoff battles and him actually show up and show out. he was on the floor, he was available. You got to see him. And Paul George is also someone who was riddled with injury. Like, let's not make it seem as if his Clippers days were not, he wasn't available, a good portion of the time either.
100%.
So like but him being on the floor and available, especially this last season, yeah, I'm comfortable paying him 4 years, $212 million max contract if I'm in contention, because I see what, if he's healthy, and it seems like he's healthy, what he can do. Zach hasn't had that opportunity here. Now, I don't want to say opportunity. It didn't happen for Zach here. The Bulls sat him down. They said, we're not going to do it. Are we going to trade you to Detroit? Listen, everybody and their mama, if you're going to get traded to Detroit, you going to get a surgery too. I don't care what nobody says.
Yeah, I'd have took that surgery. I ain't going to lie to you.
Hey, dog, listen, my foot hurt for some reason. I'm going to get the surgery. Like, I don't hey, I stubbed my toe. Shaq's
definitely would have took that surgery.
Like, I don't believe that he's not valuable. I believe that this rocky relationship and the narrative around it, and Rich Paul actually had some things to say about it. Like, the narrative around it is crazy.
Rich Paul is the only one talking about that narrative, though. Rich Paul is making it seem like people are saying Zach LaVine is a bad guy. Nobody said that. Nobody has said Zach LaVine is a bad teammate. Nobody has said that Zach LaVine is not a professional. No, but like Rich Paul was creating Zach LaVine conversation. Like, that's all that was to me when I heard him. So I was like, what? Like, who came out and was slandering Zach LaVine? And he was like, well, the conversation was around people saying that, he was being viewed differently because he took the surgery and the front office was upset about that. Well, guess what? If I just worked out a freaking deal that I can get you off of my team and you say I'm gonna take elective surgery, yeah, I'm gonna be a little upset about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, okay, so who's, but nobody's sitting here going, Zach LaVine, you made a bad decision for the organization. No, you made the right decision for Zach LaVine. Don't go to Detroit.
Don't go to Detroit.
Nobody's begrudging you for
Don't
that.
do that, my G.
But I think that's the part of it. Like, here's the thing. We've seen everything that Zach LaVine is, we have seen move. Even when Phoenix knew the new CBA was coming. Even Phoenix is still a great example. Look at what they're doing now. There's no reason they should keep those three people on this team.
I don't think they will.
The owner has already come out and said none of them are leaving, which means he's willing to hard cap his team to keep these three together.
Hey, dog, we've seen a lot of owners say a lot of different things, and then the reality hit them like, okay, maybe I need to. It's like we see that happen.
But it's different though, right? It's different in this scenario because yes, the owner still has to pay the luxury tax, which he's fine doing. The owner still has to go over to that. But the owner basically is like, we got Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker. You better find some role players to put around these months. I watched LeBron take $100 or $250,000 players to the NBA Finals. Now, do I think that any of these mugs on that team can do that? No. But my point is, you're willing to stick with that three. How many games has Kevin Durant missed in his career over the last 3 years? How many games has Bradley Beal missed in his career over the last 3 years? How many games has Devin Booker missed in his career over the last 3 years? You're willing to stick with $40+ million players, $50+ million players with somebody. But if I'm not mistaken, ain't Beal getting 60?
Bradley Beal's contract.
I think Beal is the highest paid out of all of them, if I'm not mistaken. You're willing to stick with those players, with the struggles, with the injuries, with all of that, and deal with the hard caps when that puts your team in the, how we would look at it, a bad position.
Just for kicks and giggles, I'm pulling up Bradley Beal's contract. He's expected to, he's $50 million next year. He's $50 million. Oh, by the way, his contract's worse than Zach. His is he got what Zach could have got if Zach had if he had, I forget what it was. He didn't play enough games. I don't think it's something like that. Like, he got that. I forget what it was that year. He has an escalating contract, so he is now 35% of their cap, $50 million next year, 53 the year after, and $57 million player option. Jesus. Now, listen, I'll tell you this, Pat. Hey, Pat, that contract ain't getting moved. How much do I bet? I bet you that contract ain't getting moved.
But here's the thing, with this CBA that had been voted through and put in place, that contract was moved. Bradley Beal was traded.
The new CBA hit though.
But you knew it was coming.
Yeah, Washington knew. Now, here's the thing.
Phoenix knew. Everybody in the league knew. That's my point. Everybody that we're talking about, we have seen moved. under the same conditions as Zach LaVine. That's why, to me, this is kind of turned into more of a Zach LaVine, whether he can get moved or not conversation. But like, that's why, to me, there's something deeper here. This is more than just the player. This is more than just the injury concern. This is more than the contract. There's something here that teams don't want on their team. I don't know what that is, and this is just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not this at the end of the day. Maybe the Bulls are just horrible negotiators, and they're still asking for a 22-year-old superstar back, right? Like, maybe that's really what's happening at the end of the day. I could see that as well. But Bradley Beal is everything that Zach LaVine is. And probably, if we're being 100% honest, a little bit of a better player.
Not even.
You don't think Bradley Beal's better than Zach?
No, I don't.
Okay, so in your mind,
I think Bradley Beal at one point could have been.
Hey, look, a worse player on a much higher contract based on how you're assessing this, and teams were like, no, we'll take that. We got that. And there were multiple teams trying to get Bradley Beal. Miami wanted Bradley Beal. The Nets wanted Bradley Beal. New York wanted Bradley Beal.
Nah. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm with you. You're right. Absolutely. You're right on who wanted him and things of that nature. He hasn't been the same Bradley Beal in over 3 seasons. Like, he doesn't even have we can't even say, oh man, he led them somewhere. Like, if you want to talk about a player who really did impact winning, Bradley Beal didn't lead them to no playoffs. Russell Westbrook did.
But kid, that's my point. He got moved. This is deeper than the player.
I think Phoenix was just thirsty. Let's be real.
But a lot of teams were. Miami thought they had him. Remember, Ringo was shaking in his braces. He thought it was Jimmy Butler, Bradley Beal, Bam Adebayo. Here we go.
That's a wild statement.
It was a wild joke.
That's a wild joke.
It was a wild joke. Hey, man, hit that like button, subscribe to the page if y'all have not done so. Leave that 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. We're going to keep the conversation going. But no, I like that. To me is why, like, when I look at this Bulls situation that they're in right now, I see them between a rock and a hard place because I think there's something that we just don't know. But now I'm looking at the front office and saying, okay, guess what, guys? I understand that there may be some struggles here, but I hate to tell y'all this. That's your job. How do you get it done? That, to me, will determine whether this is a successful or a failed offseason. Because, again, I said it earlier, I'll say it again. I think that the moves that you have made have been backtracks to the moves that you failed at previously. But they're not bad moves. None of the moves the Bulls have made this offseason have been bad moves.
I think the teams that really need Zach LaVine can't afford Zach LaVine. And that's really where they are. They can't afford Zach LaVine. Like, let's be real. The Lakers would love a Zach LaVine. They can't afford a Zach LaVine.
See, here's the thing, though. Yes, they can't afford a Zach LaVine, but I think if you really, really wanted Zach LaVine, we would see what got done with the DeMar DeRozan situation. A 3-team trade, something where it's like, we can't afford this dude right now, but we can move some pieces out and bring Zach LaVine. If you valued him like that.
But that was a sign-in trade for less than $100 million over in totality. Like, that was
for sure. It's a lot easier to facilitate
trade.
that one.
Yeah, like that the money DeMar is going to be making off that trade. I'm not saying this, but like, it's chump change compared to the contract that Zach LaVine has. Yeah. The Kings needed that. They got him at a discount, realistically, in my opinion.
You swapped out DeMar DeRozan for Harrison Barnes. You
really didn't. You didn't spend anything, which is why I think that's a failure. Like, we swapped out DeMar for Harrison Barnes, and we don't get Harrison Barnes. But like, that's really what happened there. Like, nah. Like, I don't get it. The teams that really need him can't afford to pay for him straight up. And if they trade for him, they're really diminishing their team to a point where it's like, it's not worth it. And if you run the list down, it just gets more and more evident. Like, name all the teams that are like one player away who need to actually have another playmaker that create for them that could have afforded them. The Mavs needed another playmaker, couldn't afford him.
But to me, those aren't the teams that are even looking for him. The teams that are looking at Zach LaVine and had trade talks about Zach LaVine, and actually, like, the Lakers were one, right? The Warriors were one. Those are teams that are just like, we're trying to just stay relevant right now. We're trying to do something.
I feel
the Warriors didn't get worse, but they didn't get better this offseason. Like, the Warriors just
haven't got better yet.
The Warriors just did something. They were just like, you know what I mean? We got to make a move.
The Warriors are they're trying
it's probably over. It's probably over.
Probably it is.
What you mean, right? They're a little, well, listen, I never count a superstar player out. Steph Curry is a superstar player. He can ball. So if you add pieces around that guy, like he can figure some stuff out. Buddy Hield to me is a phenomenal get for them. He's a little inconsistent, but if you can find some consistency in Buddy Hield, like if he was as consistent as his teeth are long, you know what I'm saying? Like he would be able to ball out there, man.
I think, but to your point though, I do think that he's going to fit in well because he's going to be open a lot more.
Better than his teeth.
A lot. I'm trying to keep it together. It'd be
crazy. They not. He didn't put them in, bro. He's had them his whole life. That's nuts, bro.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, those are not fake, bro. Go look up high school Buddy Hield.
I thought he got the veneer joints.
Nah, bro. Go look up high school Buddy Hield. Them are his.
Hey, shave them down, my G. Like they do the whole 9 for you.
Hey, Apple see Buddy Hield coming. That mug starts shaking.
I hate you, dog.
Hey, bro, that mess terrible, dog.
Let me ask you this then, because this is one thing I mentioned on
157 in the building, 52 likes. Hit that like button for us. Let's get it up over 100 likes. Go ahead.
We have Duarte. We have this lineup now. Two scenarios. One scenario, we move Zach. Obviously, we don't know what those pieces are. What's your starting lineup and why? Second scenario, we have to keep Zach. What's your starting lineup and why?
Second scenario, Zach's in the starting lineup, so it don't matter. Without Zach LaVine on there, Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Patrick Williams, probably Jalen Smith at the 4, unless you want to start Montas Buzelis, which I'm fine with. Play your rookies. Yeah, play the guys that you draft and develop. Like play those guys.
Hey, that kid is nice.
But I would say Jalen Smith if you're not going to play the rookie, and then Nikola Vucevic because I don't think Vuce ends up getting moved until halfway through the season. If Zach LaVine's here, you swap out Jalen Smith and Patrick Williams, and you move Zach LaVine to the 3, which we've seen work. Which we've seen work with the Bulls. Like that's the first 35 games. A point guard that can get it off of the board and run the ball. 2 guys that can shoot the ball. 2 guys to me now. I mean, like if we're being honest, right? If you can't move Zach LaVine and Zach, this is the weird part about this, right? We're going through this whole offseason. Let's not pretend like winning doesn't cure all. I don't know if it will in this scenario. I don't know if like all of a sudden Zach LaVine falls in love with Billy Donovan in the front office and how things have been handled. But you gotta be looking around going, dang, don't nobody want me? You gotta be, bro. There's no way you're not. There's no way you're not looking around at other teams just going like, dang, can't nobody like facilitate nothing. Y'all don't want.
Hey,
25, 5, 5. Everybody can't put up 25. Hey, I've dropped 50 multiple times in losses, but I've dropped 50.
It's the Lauri Markkanen move, if you ask me. Lauri Markkanen went over to Utah, will start cooking. He was on Sports Center. You see all these YouTube highlight clips of him dunking on people, going nuts. I don't remember them being in the playoffs.
No, because the same thing happened with Lauri Markkanen for the main reason that the Chicago Bulls got rid of him. Lauri Markkanen played 66 games that season.
Hey, 66 was a good get.
Yeah.
I'm good with 66.
Next year he played 55. Yeah, the problem is, though, 66 is good unless the 66 is 66 games into the season and you can't play the rest of them. That's what happened to Lowry. You know what I mean? Like, in the overview, it's like, our threshold is 65. You play 65 games in the regular season, it's basically a full season. Let's go. That's what the rules say. I'm here for it.
Hey, listen.
But if you're not there for none of the parts where I need to get to the playoffs.
25 points, 25, 8. 25, 8, and let's just start 25 and 8. All right, he ain't getting no assists like that.
He's not passing that ball.
Yeah, he ain't passing that right. That bad boy in the air. Listen, I'm good with that. 66 games, 25 and 8. I take that. Easy money.
Yeah.
All Zach got to do is play 66 games, average 25 plus points, and they have to win a good portion of the games that he plays. And we're having a different conversation by trade deadline next year.
But see, I don't think so, right? Because here's the thing: Zach LaVine playing 65 games is not something new. Zach LaVine playing a healthy 65 games is new. Zach LaVine playing a healthy season is something that would be new based on since he signed the contract. I would say probably the past 4 years of Zach LaVine, they've been very unhealthy seasons. Some of those are to start the season, but like even playing through some injuries. And I love the fact that he's willing to play through some injuries, but like, right. Like, and again, I think it all ends up going around. Like there's so many things that go into what makes Zach LaVine to me at this point in the league untradeable right now. I just don't know if any of those change. I don't know if seeing him go, like, what is seeing Zach LaVine go out and put up 50 points change about the narrative on Zach LaVine right now?
Depends on how he does it and who he does it against.
I mean, even so, we've seen him put up 40 against, dominant defenses. I've seen him score 30 plus against Miami. I've seen him. Yeah, I mean, I think he had I think his 40 ball game was versus Golden State where they was letting that mug fly back and forth. Yeah, I mean, like I've seen him play against good teams and score points. What changes about who Zach LaVine is?
When you say what changes or what makes people more attracted to him, because I still believe he can be a top 10, top 5 talent in this league if he can just stay healthy. So like if you're asking the question, what changes? Nothing. You just get to see him on the floor and then recency bias kicks in. And that's what happens with every player. Recency bias kicks in. Oh my God, yeah. The Bulls lost against the Celtics, but Zach LaVine dropped 50. That matters. Did they lose by 1 or did they lose by 50? Oh, they lost by 1. Zach LaVine went off. God dang. Get him some help. That's going to be the narrative. Oh, Zach LaVine went off for 50, but they lost by 20 to the Celtics. Why was Zach LaVine shooting so much? That's going to be the narrative. That's what
I mean, see, I think even that though, right? We've seen that. I've seen Zach do that. I saw Zach do that the second year versus the Celtics. When the Celtics went to the finals. You know what I mean?
And that's why he got the contract. Let's be real.
His first year of the contract. I saw Zach do that.
We saw him do it. He got the contract. It kind of fell off because now we're talking about him, DeMar, and all these things in between, losing a point guard, stuff like that. We hadn't really seen that same Zach unless we go back to Patrick Beverley and that run after the All-Star break. That was the only patch of games that we saw that version of Zach. Everything else was what's going on here. And when we saw that version of Zach LaVine, the city was on fire. Everybody loved it.
Yeah, I mean,
he got a point guard now.
You love it.
Different.
But see, that was my original point with all of this, right? Like to me, that is right. Does that change even the narrative on getting rid of or keeping Zach? Because now I don't think teams will view Zach any differently. But if he's helping you winning and you've actually got a winning dynamic, does it change how I feel about Billy Donovan? Does it change how he feels about, like we've seen that happen. We've seen players that are like, I'm done with this team. I'm never coming back. And then the season starting is like, well, here we go. They start winning. They're like, it ain't that bad.
I like this comment. Empty stats is a real thing, bro. Listen, empty stats are a real thing, but I want you to understand something. Whether you like him or not, if he's on this team, he has to play. And if he has to play, I want him to play.
I want him to put up the stats.
You want him to put up the stats. like he still has to do his job and stuff like that. So like realistically, even if you're the star on a bad team, you still have to go do your job. And a lot of the people we talked about in this live were stars on bad teams. And they still, Bradley Beal was averaging 30 with the Wizards.
Yeah. He was a star on a very bad team. He was definitely a star on a bad team. I don't know, man. Like like when I look at this front office, like that, the point of this live was to, kind of assess how the front office is doing. That's the one that's going to determine one way or the other. And I would say, like, what would you say is the more successful thing, facilitating a Zach LaVine trade or finding a way to fix the Zach LaVine relationship? What would be a more successful version of the offseason in your book?
Finding a way to salvage the relationship, because at this point, we're grasping at straws and pretty much going to get rid of Zach for nothing at this point. Like it looks like.
Well, I knew you were getting rid of Zach for nothing. I was accepting that.
And I don't think that we should. I think that does nothing but hinder us even more. And so to me, the best thing would be to try to salvage that relationship and make that work. I do think Kobe and Zach can exist together. I do think that Zach can be a willing passer. I've seen him do it. I saw him do it with people not making shots too. So like I've seen him be willing to do that. He fits that pace of play. And Chicago could really, like, they really turned the corner on this one. We have our definitive star. We have our up and coming star. We have a team that can actually build for the future. getting rid of him and then going into obscurity because we're gonna have to get rid of him or nothing. It's like, are we betting on P. Will? Are we betting on Kobe White? Is that really what we're doing?
I'm fine with doing that. I really am. Heading into 2025, I'm fine with doing that because to me, you're doing one of two things. Number one, you're betting on P. Will and Kobe White, but either they put up or I get my top 10 pick. And in a draft that a top 10 pick is actually going to matter. And there's only one of two ways where I'm going to feel better about it, right? If I don't get my top 10 pick and it's like, oh, dang it, we didn't get the pick. Kobe White's putting up 28 points a game. No, that's not bad. I'll take that. You know what I mean? Like that's the two way, right? Pat Will finally found his way to 15 points. Shout out to him. Like that's the, and I think that there's only one of two ways. There's only one of two ways that this season goes. Now, if you have Zach LaVine there, and I don't understand this sentiment that if Zach LaVine's there, Kobe White can't develop. That's dumb. If Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, and everybody else is there, I can understand why Kobe White can't develop. But if Zach LaVine is there, Zach LaVine's the other shooter. You have to have you're like Josh Giddey's not shooting, guys.
Like we've I wish somebody would thank you, Pat. He's not shooting that ball. Like, why y'all think somebody was in this chat cooking me. It was like, he can't shoot. You're right. That's not why I want him on the team.
That's not why I want him on the team.
He's a 6'9", 6'8", 6'9" point guard who can run the floor and get other people open and attack the basket when I need him to. I want that guy to facilitate, get the rock to the other guys who gonna put the ball in the air.
It is so funny to me that we live in an era of basketball now where a point guard being a point guard is a bad thing.
That is wild.
And people will sit there and be like, well, he won't be able to pass the ball as well if he can't score the basketball. I didn't say he couldn't score the basketball. I just like there's multiple ways you can score. I just said that he can't shoot.
And then insert Rajon Rondo, who did that for most of his career until the last couple years.
But in people's mind, that kind of player doesn't work in this modern NBA. Even in that, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me. Now, I will say this: you got to be an elite level passer.
I think he is,
and you probably like the one thing that he has to improve upon is you got to be a better defender. You got to figure out which here's and if anything, and I got to get up out of here, but I appreciate y'all tuning in, rocking with us. If you haven't hit that like button already, man. Did we do over 300 in the chat?
We didn't.
We over 300 in the chat.
300.
The one thing that Bulls fans keep coming out, oh my God, he's a terrible defender. What are we ever gonna do? I watched Billy Donovan take a team that had DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, and Nikola Vucevic.
And made them defenders.
And they're a top 10 defense. Now, they're not defenders, but they are a top 10 defense.
But that was Alex Caruso doing.
Oh, it was. It was a lot of help. Now you got Ayo DeSumo. Now you got Torrey Craig. Now you got P. Will, right? Now you got to rely on other guys. Listen, all I'm saying is this. I've seen some amazing things because I watched three players that never played defense on their previous teams play a little defense. You know what I mean? So I'm not as worried about the Giddey thing, but he does have to improve defensively. He's a horrible defender. You got to be better defensively. And offensively, you have to make an impact. And that impact, I'm okay with that impact being I make other people on the court get open shots.
If James Harden can improve, anybody can.
James Harden was always he's not a good defender, but he's a great free safety.
That man's help defense was crazy. Like for someone who doesn't hold any defense to the public opinion, he averaged nearly two steals a game, and then as later years, he's still averaging a steal and a half.
But that's my point. Phenomenal free safety,
like you said.
Terrible defender. Like if I got you one-on-one, not me, but like if a real NBA player got you one-on-one, like I'm living with James Harden trying to guard him. If it's Kyrie versus James Harden, James finna die. Hey, we actually heard about how that went. That's the whole reason that Brooklyn didn't.
Hey, did you see it? Like with the Mavs versus Clippers?
But
that was so personal, bro. I don't know what that's personal.
But we heard it. We heard about that's the reason when things went down. He was effing that man up in practice.
That's crazy.
He was like, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?
We need you. Go back."
Hey, man, we appreciate y'all tuning in, showing love. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, man. If you're on the Twitter side, hit that retweet button. We had 170, I think, at the peak over on the YouTube side, 152 over on the Twitter side, man. Appreciate y'all rocking with us. As always, for the pettiest man alive, Mr. P. Kid, it's your boy, Pat the Designer, back at it again. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. See Red Nation. Stand up.
Peace.
Forward.